Fort Snelling, the often forgot about historical outpost right under our nose. Most of us went there in elementary school and spent time inside the fort, but not many people take the time to appreciate the natural beauty around it. In 1805, Lieutenant Zebulon Pike did a barely notarized, very controversial deal with the Sioux Nation for 100,000 acres in this area, which includes where Minneapolis and St. Paul are today. Out of the 7 native representatives, only 2 signed the treaty. Right around this time, westward European settlement was increasing, and this required oversight to make deals to secure the lands and then regulate them. After the War of 1812, it seemed crucial for the US government to field a solid position before the British and Canadians started to push this way. In 1819, Fort Snelling was planned at the most strategic of spots, where the Minnesota and the mighty Mississippi rivers collide. It took from 1820 to 24 to build the structure. U.S. Colonel Josiah Snelling oversaw the troops and laid the cornerstone as they carried out this fortification project. Fort Snelling stood as a unique and very self-sufficient stronghold. The surrounding areas right outside the walls of the fort were farmed for sustenance. These small examples here are more like gardens now, but the original operations really must have been a sight to see. Just below the fort is a large, heavily forested island called Pike Island. It's one of my favorite local places to hike, and although you can hear constant air traffic, it feels like its own little world tucked away right in the busy metro. A small bridge puts you on the island, and although there are trails through the middle, I always walk around the perimeter. Heading first along the north side, looking up the Mississippi, you're exposed to some sandy flats and many places to hang out. Maybe even cook a guerrilla gourmet meal with your friends here. The vegetation on this side is slightly different than on the other side, and I can't really figure out why. My guess is that the other side is more of a saturated floodplain, and this side has higher, sandier banks. The interior of Pike Island has lush green meadows and everything that comes with it. Halfway on this hike is a beautiful point where the Minnesota and Mississippi rivers collide. It's wild to imagine what it would have been like to navigate these waters in canoes, hauling heavy goods for hundreds of miles. The Dakota peoples who lived in this area actually considered this specific point to be the center of the earth. During the Dakota War of 1862, although the U.S. was allied with some specific native factions, the U.S. government held 1,600 women, children, and elderly natives in an internment camp on this island. A harsh winter, lack of food, and a cholera outbreak took over 300 lives. The next year, the government relocated those to a drought-stricken region of Crow Creek in South Dakota. Now, I'm not one for superstitious vibes, but this island has seen a lot, and it's drenched in history. In the center of the island, there are still decaying posts from the internment camp's fencing. The south side of the island on the second half of the trail, to me, is even more peaceful and serene. Near the end of the hike, what looks like the oldest growth of trees on the island shoot out in amazing directions, and the ground cover is much less dense. At first, I thought I saw the same group of whitetails, but I found out it wasn't. When I began to further observe, I encountered the biggest treat of the day, an absolutely gorgeous piebald that looked like some kind of show horse. A group of runners caused the herd to make a break for thicker brush. Well, except for the piebald. He had a look of detectable concern at first, but it only lasted briefly. And then he resumed normal deer hangout mode. The very last moments on Pike Island have a portion of the Mendota Bridge towering in the background above the calm waters of a seam of the Minnesota River. The hill right below the fort seems a lot steeper going back up. One can imagine how many loads of heavy supplies were painstakingly hauled up hundreds of years ago. Nature is seasonal, but the stone of Fort Snelling remains as a solid reminder of the complex and robust history here. Go check it out.